Well, a week ago today, we were looking at snow, and here we are a week later, and we are looking at a mostly quiet weather week ahead. Although that may change come next weekend, might even be some snow, ice, and rain issues depending on where you are, but that's still a ways down the road yet. However, much sooner than that is tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And of course, you can easily support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast if you choose to do so by using our Amazon referral link and doing your Amazon shopping from that link. Because when you do, you get your stuff, and Amazon throws us back a little bit of coin, and it doesn't come out of your pocket, it comes out of theirs. So it doesn't cost you one extra cent. And we appreciate those of you who have shopped our referral link. And for those of you who may shop our referral link on Amazon. So it was a nice 3 days off. My grandkids got me a Coca-Cola hat for my birthday, which is tomorrow. So I'm happily wearing that. That's about of all the soft drinks out there, that's the only one I drink from time to time is I'll have a glass of Coke because I like it. I'm not a Pepsi fan. I'm a Coke fan. And Coke is based in Atlanta, so try finding anything other than Coca-Cola whenever you go out someplace.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, there was an All in the Family episode many years ago. Obviously, the show has not been on except in reruns. But there was an episode where Mike, or Meathead, depending upon how you, Rob Reiner, was telling everybody about how he was able to tell the difference between Coke, Pepsi, and Royal Crown Cola. And nobody would believe him in the family till finally did a taste test, and he was able to pick out the right one. And I agree with him. To me, there's a definite taste to Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Pepsi to me is a sharp taste, and Royal Crown just like was flat, like it's been sitting out there for the last 2 or 3 days. But yeah, you're right. Of the three, I definitely would prefer Coke. And in fact, Joe, when I go to a restaurant and I'm looking at the beverages and I look at the waitress, I said Coke, and she says no Pepsi. I said no, forget it.
Well, hopefully the folks at Coca-Cola in Atlanta are watching the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is on
Love
Sunday
you,
through
Coke.
Thursday at 7:35 p.m. because they just got a free advertise. They just got free advertising
Maybe it'll be a
from
sponsor.
us. Yeah, if only. All right, so we've got a rather quiet. Oh, I should do one other. No, never mind. Um, we uh, we should have a fairly quiet week ahead weather-wise. It seems like the only thing that we have to really worry about, and if you want to call it a worry, is just day-to-day fluctuations in temperatures. No extremes on either side. We'll have a couple of days where temperatures will be above normal, a couple of days where the temperatures will be close to normal, and at least through Friday, it doesn't look like we have much of any precipitation to worry about here.
Right. We might see the passing snow shower or flurry, but that's certainly not going to be a big deal. In fact, I actually had a brief snow flurry here today, Joe. It didn't last for very long, but it was around. And we also saw temperatures for the first time, at least at my house, since last Sunday, get above freezing. It only got to 31 yesterday, but today it hit 40, and it was like springtime. It would have been nicer if we hadn't had a gusty breeze at times, making the real feel more like 30 than 40, but still, it was about as nice a day today as we've had in the better part of the last week.
Well, I this morning was my highest low temperature of the week, and that was 18 this morning. However, we did break 50 today. I have to go back and look. I don't know. I don't think I broke if I broke 50 once this month, but I got to go back and look to be sure. I mean, it's been really a very cold month here in North Georgia. It's the thing that's really that has stood out is well, not only that we did have that snowfall back a couple of weeks ago, but also the fact that the cold has been just so persistent.
It has. It has. And I had 3 nights. I said I had 3 consecutive nights using a Norm Dvoskinism in the tingle digits. We had temperatures that were only in the single digits, and even one night when it was below zero. So it's been a while, at least a couple of years, since we've had that type of condition. But now, as I said, we got back to near seasonable today, and it looks like we're having another near seasonable day tomorrow. In fact, the next time we'll have colder than normal temperatures probably won't be until later this week on Thursday, and that unfortunately will set the stage for a potential problem coming our way for next weekend.
Yeah, the pattern is changing to where uh, the cold will not be persistent, and therefore, there's more volatility. It probably makes things a little bit harder to forecast because now we're going to have to start dealing with, when there is cold air around, how long is it going to stay? Is it going to last longer than advertised? Is it going to last shorter than advertised? And we are going to also probably start to see more storm systems moving along in the flow because when you look back at the whole month of January, Joe, I mean, at least in your neck of the woods, and even here, it's been bone dry.
Well, Frank R. brings up a most interesting point. I didn't notice it until he posted it on the chat board. New York City is about to set its driest January on record. Records, of course, go back to 1869. Joe, the driest January was back in 1981, where we had 0.58 inches of precipitation for the entire month of January. And so far, we've had only 3/4 of an inch, 0.45. And as you pointed out, we're likely to not see much in the way of precipitation during this week. February comes in on Saturday. So we could indeed very well, and this is coming off of that exceedingly dry October where we had all of 1/100th of an inch of rain. It looks like we're going to be setting another precipitation record this month for the driest January on record, with again only 3/4 of an inch of precipitation. That's pretty hard to do when you consider that January is normally a rather stormy month. But here you go. We're looking for another dry month of January.
It's been a while since we've had a major storm anywhere. I mean, we've seen some interesting storm systems this month for sure, but we haven't seen any of those classic wrapped up deep lows that you see from time to time during the winter months. That's been sorely absent. They've been more along the lines of weaker lows with strong overrunning setups. Those that has seemed to be the more dominant feature that we've had for this month.
It looks like we're going to have ourselves another potential overrunning pattern coming our way to kick off February. Um, we've got on Saturday of next weekend, we're going to have a storm in the Central Plains, and that storm looks like it's going to head up to the eastern Great Lakes to our west, and that is the classic overrunning setup for initially maybe some snow, but also with enough warm air advection, we could find the snow change to ice, sleet, freezing rain, and maybe just maybe, if we don't have a situation where we have cold air damming, a changeover or finishing off as perhaps plain rain. But that's next weekend, and we'll see how that all pans out. That's still
Yeah.
about five or
Well,
six
I'm
months.
not so sure about a low going to the lakes. I think it's probably going to be more of a weaker low and how much cold that goes. Everything wants to go south this year, so I'm suspect that this one will not, run up to the lakes or a typical west side of the Appalachians type of low. But I think it may be a question of how much cold air wedges in or doesn't wedge in, that'll determine whether we wind up with, a snow to ice. I think it's probably some places are going to see some snow. Some places I think are going to see some ice, and some places are going to see some plain rain as you go from south to north or north to south, or whatever, however you want to set up your perspective. Welcome to everybody tonight on the chat board, and welcome to Those of you who may be watching the show but not on the chat board, we invite you to become part of the conversation and give us your questions and comments. We appreciate those. On tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, we're here Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're off usually on Fridays and Saturdays unless there's a pending snow situation or storm situation. We always let you know ahead of time whether we are adding a show. So subscribe and turn your notifications on. And of course, if you like the show, please, by all means, hit the like button. Because when we get to 100 likes, the Joe Rayo rings the bell like it's Notre Dame. And, we celebrate the fact that we got at least 100 likes. But not again, not much going on tonight. Most of the country experiencing, let's call it non-advisory or non-warning weather. There are some exceptions. We've got high wind warnings up for parts of southwestern New York and north central and northern New York, along with some lake effect snow warnings and some winter weather advisories in north central New York, as the lake effect machine has been pretty much going with very little respite. We've got advisories up, wind advisories up over Michigan, northeastern Illinois, south. I think those are wind advisories. Can I double check here? Yes, they are. And also for areas around Milwaukee and Chicago, northeastern South Dakota. In the Southwest and in Southern California, with all the things that they've had, and we now have winter weather advisories in the mountains in Southern California, including the mountains that are to the east of San Diego, winter weather advisories in northeast Arizona, winter storm warnings up the southern portion of the Sierra Nevadas on both sides of the Nevada state line. So that's kind of interesting. And fog. I think that's fog, and let's make sure they're not air quality alerts. Oh, I take it back. They are air stagnation advisories in the parts of the Northwest. Well, talk about dry. I mean, there's been the northwestern part of the United States. We often tease about the fact that Seattle in the wintertime it's depressing because it rains just about every single day. I mean, this has got to be one of the driest stretches of weather during the winter months that I can remember up in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, it's not the Pacific Northwest at this time of the year. It's actually usually the Pacific Northwest, and this is the time of the year when places like Seattle and Portland get lots of clouds, lots of rain. But this has been an atypical winter so far. You're absolutely right, Joe. They've had very dry conditions, relatively dry conditions, considering the time of the year, and it's kind of strange to see in places that you normally would expect to have nice, clean, dry air, air quality advisories for places like the Columbia Basin of Washington, parts of Idaho, eastern sections of Oregon. It's been a really weird winter from coast to coast, depending upon what you're looking at.
Oh yeah. When you get almost a foot of snow in New Orleans, it's really strange. Brandon Doherty, thank you for hitting the tip jar tonight. Most appreciated on this Sunday night. Brandon is also known as AKA Delaware Weather Guy. So if you're on Facebook, check out his Facebook page, Delaware Weather Guy. So much for the rest of the watches and mornings. We look at the satellite. There's a little bit of moisture moving across the deep south, but it's not snow. It's rain. We have to make that delineation now, Joe. You can't just reflexively say it's rain in the deep south after what happened last week. I mean, you
Yes,
have to point it out.
absolutely. And I'm still shaking my head seeing some of those photos from New Orleans, from Bourbon Street, of 8 and 10 inches of snow. That's if you had told me that was going to happen or that was possible, I'd laugh in your face. I say, yeah, well, maybe an inch, maybe a couple of inches, but I mean, my God, it's crazy. There's another
Yes.
example. There's another example of anomalous conditions. I mean, like, it's been crazy, left and right. The whole weather pattern across the country is turned upside down.
Things are moving along. When you look at how the satellite loop is working, you got the system that's dropping down to the southwest. You got this thing here that's going pretty much straight east across the south. Again, it's just light precipitation. And then you've got this northwest flow that's going to dominate the weather for much of this week across the northeast and northern mid-Atlantic states and back through the Great Lakes and the plains. And there's these little upper troughs that keep moving along in that flow. One of them, actually, it seems like we're getting one coming through almost every day. And if you look carefully here, you can actually see, there's a band of some snow running across Lake Ontario into north central New York, which is why they have the lake effect snow warnings that are up there. That again, pretty persistent. And there's another upper trough that's back in near Lake Superior that's swinging southeast and just bursting on the scene north of North Dakota is yet another one that's going to be coming through in the northwest flow. Now, the thing is, unless one of these troughs were to dig, and it doesn't look like, well, the one that may come on later Wednesday night into Thursday, may dig just enough so that it brings some accumulating snows to parts of upstate New York and central and northern New England. But you would need to get one of those to dig far enough south to take a low out underneath us, and that's as often as we see these types of systems, you would think that every once in a while you could get something to go to the south, but the ones that are in this flow this week are just going to more or less march along, and all that means for us is just for eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England is temperature fluctuations from day to day as these troughs approach, and then after they go by.
Right, absolutely. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up is the fact that we're now entering the time frame. All the people who are snow lovers, it won't happen until after we get into February. But I think it's between the 5th and the 19th of February, the so-called snow window, when if you're hoping for a big snow storm, and I know a lot of people on the chat board have been indicating that they're waiting for one. Oh, what happened? We used to have nor'easters. How come we don't have those? Well, anyway, that period, that 2 week period, historically or hysterically, if you're a snow lover, um, is the time when we have seen some of the really big snowstorms in New York weather history. Now, I'm not saying we're going to get into one during that time frame this year, but if you're hoping from a climatological point of view, that's the time to look is during that 2 week interval. Unfortunately, from what I've been able to see, Joe, or been able to get a handle on things from Climate Prediction Center and other sources, this may turn out to be a somewhat milder than normal February. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but that's how it's looking to some right now.
Oh, should probably start that way anyway. Sal Patchy, thank you for the super chat and for the happy birthday wishes. Most appreciated. It's tomorrow. The big double sixes. Boxcars, Joe. I'm boxcars tomorrow. You of course are turning of course are turning 69, which has its own little identification marker, which we won't get into here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast
No,
because
it's my
after all,
final.
we are a family oriented show.
I mean, for me, it's going to be my final year in the '60s, and
Right.
that's
Lower
hard
in
for
the
me.
sh-
That's hard
Lower
for
in the
me to
shore.
imagine. It's hard for me to even contemplate, considering it seemed like just a short time ago I was in my 20s.
Well, you're not being funny. It's actually quite, it is quite true. Just passage of time. The minute, sometimes days can be eternities and the years just fly by. I think
Yep.
that's, somebody once told me that, and I think that's, no, that's a very true statement. Here's our radar loops tonight. There's that patch of lake effect snow coming off Lake Ontario. Most of the radars except for some action going on in parts of New Brunswick. Oh, a snow squall warning in northeastern Maine. The red box there. Meanwhile, here's the rain in the south across Louisiana. and into Mississippi. Of course, temperatures were into the 50s and 60s today down here, so a lot of the big snow has melted, if not completely gone in some places. We've got rain into central Alabama, starting to push into Georgia, south of Atlanta, at least aloft. And on the northern edge of this, I got to just check the odds real quick because, in theory, up in where it is in Tennessee, it's a little colder up there. I just want to take a look and see if any of that is actually reaching the ground and in the form of snow. Memphis is 47, so we know well, they're out of it now anyway. They're not really into that precip area. Let's take a look. Let's try Nashville, see what's happening in there. Nashville right now is 44 and cloudy. They actually do have some snow showers in the rain and snow showers tonight in the forecast. You can see in northern Tennessee, some of the and going east that some of the lows are forecast to be down in the upper 20s and low 30s. So they might see a couple of snowflakes there. And on we widen this radar out here. If I could get my mouse back. We've got some precip here in Southern California for a change. Uh, Pockets of rain showers along the coast. They don't have strong winds that they're dealing with, so that's good news for them. And you can see there is some snow up in the mountains showing up on the radar. Oh, I lost my mouse. Oh, there it goes. I just got to do something real quick here. There we go. So that's taken care of. So the radars are also pretty quiet. And as far as WPC with the rainfall, we're looking at uh, in the Northeast, and this is not going to be during the week. This will be next weekend. A half to three quarters of an inch of liquid in upstate New York and western New York, northwest Pennsylvania. With these troughs moving through, they're probably going to continue to see lake effect action into Thursday. And there's even an area of an inch and a half, small patch of an inch and a half off of Lake Ontario uh, in areas around Pulaski, Watertown, and so on. Otherwise, it's mostly dry up and down the seaboard. Uh, 2 to 3 inches of rain in some areas from East Texas to Mississippi, and the inch and a half pushes into northern Georgia and northwestern Georgia and goes back almost to West Texas on the south side. Oh, look, lo and behold, in the Pacific Northwest, it's picking up here. They're showing an inch and a half to maybe 2.5 inches over the next 7 days from just north of San Francisco up the coast towards Seattle and then back up into southwestern Canada. So the dry spell is maybe about to break there, and it'll probably mean for some snow in the mountains up in the northern Rockies too.
That looks more like it. I mean, what you're seeing there on the map, the QPF map, that is indeed typical of what you would see in the month of January, the late January. Those bands of possibly moderate to heavy rain hitting the Pacific coast, unlike what they have been seeing of late, which is just bone dry weather. So maybe things are maybe things are going to be advancing back to a more normal pattern as we move into or progress through the month of February, Joe.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at the upper air. By the way, did I thank Sal Patchy for hitting Super Chat?
Yes, you did,
I
but we
thought
can
I
open
did. Okay, but
again.
if not, thank you again. All right, so looking at the upper air tonight, uh, I guess we could call this a bit of a split flow. You have here's the northern part of the jet stream, and you can see these upper troughs here. They're moving in the northern part. Now we've got this thing. We've got the southern part, and it's featured by this large upper low that is sitting off the coast of California between Los Angeles and San Francisco. So they're actually getting some colder air that's been filtering southward because of the flow there. And sometimes when you get these setups with these split flows, you get the northern jet to couple with the southern jet, and they phase, and you wind up with a big storm. But the thing is that the two streams are basically going to stay separate. We have to wait for much of this week for the southwestern system to get kicked out. That probably happens along about Thursday. You see it start to move east. And meanwhile, in the Northeast, here are the two troughs that are coming down. Here's one for Tuesday that swings through. And Joe mentioned maybe a snow shower with that. I thought last week that this one would be deeper and further south, that we could get maybe a line of snow showers or maybe even a heavier snow squall. That looks like if it's going to happen, it'll probably be further north. Then you got the second short wave that digs behind it, but it doesn't dig far enough south to take a surface low to the south, but it digs far enough south that maybe we'll see some snow across upstate New York and for central and northern New England come Wednesday, later Wednesday and Wednesday night. And then you've got this system getting kicked eastward. Now, the northwest flow never completely gets kicked out of the way. So, this upper feature, instead of, you had models, Joe, that were trying to phase this and taking this up to Minnesota back just a couple of days ago. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. There's a northwest flow there to the north. So, the upper low is going to open up and try to track nearby or maybe even go by just to our south. So it becomes a question of, how does the surface set up and how much cold air, because we are going to get a shot of cold air to come down on Thursday into Friday. So how much of that cold air is going to try and wedge in on next Saturday and Sunday? That to me is the big question here. And then if I widen out just to show the overall pattern and how much different it is going to be, you do have some Canadian connection here over the next couple of weeks, but it's a little more transitory in nature. And you also have out in the west some changes in the Pacific that seem to be driving some systems from Alaska. If you watch the loop, you could see these jet streaks that drive down from Alaska and then move southward along the west coast. So that's a big change from what we saw recently. I think you're going to see a pattern that's much more a stretch of weather that's much more transitory in nature going forward. Cold air masses will come in, but then they won't last too long. They'll go out, and we'll have probably some storm systems in the mix. But if you're a snow lover, the way it happens is you got to time it perfectly with a cold air mass coming down and have something maybe in the southern part of the jet stream to move along. That's always a tough proposition, even in the best of patterns. So I don't know what else to say if I want to, in regards to trying to give snow lovers a little bit of hope. But here are our systems for this week. There's the southern one that goes by underneath tonight and tomorrow with that little area of rain. Here comes the northern. The gradient, Joe, in New England and even down into Pennsylvania into Northern Virginia gets pretty tight Monday afternoon into Tuesday morning with that first trough. I don't know about wind advisories, but maybe further north you might see those. And then, of course, that goes out. Here comes the second low. You can see the low center goes to our north across upstate New York and then redevelops near Cape Cod. That may be good for snow in upstate New York and for Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and perhaps even into Maine. But it's not going to help, it's not going to be much help further south. And then, of course, that southern system, you see the low there that starts to come out of East Texas. The upper feature kind of gets shoved underneath. So you have a dying primary in southern Illinois, and you got all this moisture that comes up into a high that's up in eastern Canada. This is a tough sell. This is tough to figure because you're not going to really know how much cold air you have to play with until you get maybe till about Wednesday or Thursday.
Well, I agree about the winds. I mean, I think we're going to be looking at a rather blustery wind flow. I mean, tomorrow we'll probably be seeing winds ahead of that approaching front. Winds will be from the southwest tomorrow, could be gusting to over 30 miles an hour. Then the front comes on by. Tuesday, we'll have more of a westerly wind flow, but still gusts 25, 30, 35 miles an hour. And then Wednesday and Thursday, not quite as strong, but still the winds will be breezy, if you will, maybe 20, 25. So this is going to be, for much of this week, the wind is going to play a big factor in our weather. Then things kind of calm down a bit for Friday in advance of that next system, whatever it is, wherever it goes and whatever it brings us, rain, snow, sleet, for next weekend.
Yeah, there's a lead piece that runs out ahead. And when that arrives, if this is correct, if it were to come in Saturday, late morning into Saturday afternoon and evening, the northern part of that's probably going to be snow. And then you get the main body of energy probably comes up on Sunday. Now, how much cold air is left, I don't know. And it could be one of these situations where the low levels in some places have a real tough time getting above 32. So this could wind up being, I want to keep an eye on this as to far as whether there might be some icing issues and maybe in some places some serious icing issues that could develop out of this. After that goes out, you'll notice the pickup of moisture in the west, particularly the northwest, where you've got areas of rain and snow that come in. You do have a cold high that is coming down. Some of that cold air is going to try to get into the east at some point. And now we're up to about February 4th here on the maps, and then we'll keep rolling along. There's still action in the west. There's a lot of still a lot of noise in the upper flow, so it's hard to see. It's hard to take the long range that's being printed out too seriously because we know it changes every time we see a run of the model. We may see even more volatility going forward with all these short waves running around.
Yeah, the big question for next weekend is how much cold air is going to be remaining in place, whether or not we have a cold air damming situation that would preclude, let's say, a warm front from pushing on through the area during the course of next weekend. For example, on the chat board, I think William Jersey Shore is asking me, said, do I think we're going to have an ice storm? Do you think there's going to be an ice storm next weekend in Asbury Park? At this juncture, again, this is like 5, 6 days in advance. I really can't tell you one way or another whether it's going to be snow, ice, or wintry mix changing to rain. Still much too early, and we need more information to nail it down. What I can say is that from this standpoint, it looks like it is going to be, at least from one way, an unsettled weekend next weekend. But as to exactly what we're going to get, we're just going to have to wait and see.
By the way, I was showing thank you for pointing it out. I didn't realize I still had the 6Z GFS app from overnight. Here's the 18Z. If it makes everybody happy, I'll use the primary run. I'll use the 12Z. So we know that there's not going to be much difference. There's not very much difference in the stuff that goes on this week. Here comes the system for Sunday and for the weekend, and kind of the same idea here on this one that was in the prior run. This run for some reason was a little colder, kind of holding that high because there's not a whole lot of ice. And for inland areas, northern New Jersey, and then the Hudson Valley and points northward, this particular run showed a bit more in the way of snow. It's not going to matter. I honestly, whichever run I used, I'm going to say the same exact thing I said with regards to the weather going forward. And then going into
You don't have
after
any
that
maps.
goes,
There's
what's
no
that?
maps. No maps.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We've been off for 3 days. You can excuse me for being just a little bit behind the curve. But here's the 12Z from today, which was pretty much not that different from the 6Z, which I accidentally had up. But it's I would going to say the same thing. And this one, you get a primary that goes into western, southwest PA, and then redevelops off the Delaware coast and goes out. And then, as I said, there was a little bit more cold air trying to wedge down. You're not going to know the answer to that question until the end of the week anyway. And then going forward, there's a cold highs that come down. Some of that cold air gets into the east. The models are trying to take storms to the lakes, which I think in this pattern probably makes some sense, but I'm very suspicious because this winter, anytime the models have shown, the times that models have shown big wrapped up storms, they have not materialized. They've been weaker. They've been further south. So you know what? You're going to have to prove it to me that it's going to be different going forward in the next 16 days. Look, here, as I said earlier, if you're a snow lover, you have to hope that the timing is perfect with the cold air when it is around, that you've got a system to play with. Because if you don't, you're not gonna get much of anything. Okay, and then it would be a situation that the cold air moves out and it warms up and rains. I wouldn't completely give up on the notion that there wouldn't be some chances for snow going forward in the next couple of weeks. It just has to be perfect in terms of what the upper air looks like, as well as
And
the surface.
yeah, well, you know, it's sometimes you can see it from a mile away. 4 or 5 days away, cold air slowly but surely getting into position as a storm tries to come up from the south and interact with it to produce snow. As sometimes things are moving so quickly that it varies or changes from one run to the next. And this pattern coming up for next weekend looks rather complicated, to say the least. Not sure whether or not there may be a second storm that may develop near the coast. They'll try to cut off warm air advection and maybe keep everything cold enough for frozen precipitation, or whether or not the main system maintains itself, goes up to the Great Lakes, pulls up enough warm air to change everybody over. Who knows? Five,
Yeah.
6 days in advance, it's all speculation. We certainly will have a better handle on this by the middle of this upcoming week. And a
Yeah. I
question,
mean,
and a question. This may possibly force us to do a Friday show. We'll see.
it might, rabbit. It might, rabbit. It might.
It might. It might.
Yes. So did you have a nice weekend?
Yeah, it was a quiet weekend. Mrs. Rayo was back in Pennsylvania helping her brother. As many of you know, my father-in-law passed away last month, and so now begins the process of trying to clear everything or clean everything out. And her younger brother was just overwhelmed. So naturally, Mrs. Rayo, being the wonderful sister that she is, helped her brother out and spent the weekend. So it was just me and the dog this weekend.
Well, that's nice. You know what? I'm going to show. Hold on a second. So this is what. Let me set this up. Okay, that's not. I gotta. So what I did was, so I had tomorrow's my birthday, and Friday was my granddaughter's birthday. So we decided to just have everybody come up here and celebrate my birthday, and of course that meant that I cooked. So I'm not sure. You can't. This is not the best picture in the world, but that's actually a French cut pork roast before it went into the oven. And I made asparagus in garlic and olive oil, and I also made garlic roasted. Again, this is before they went into the oven. Garlic roasted potatoes. So that was the menu today. And I'm going to see if I have did the other pictures come up. I got to check here. Hold on. Let me put us back in here. Um, let's see what else I got. Oh, yes, I do have the final product. So this is what the pork roast looked like afterward. And there you go. So I mean, it looks like it's cut like a rib roast or a prime rib, and you cook it that way. You cook it like a prime rib. And I also baked a apple pie, a Dutch apple pie. Thank you to my wonderful friend Marie Callender. I don't know if you know her, Joe, um, but she's very generous. Um, you can pick up she has she gave me one of her pies and I threw it in the oven and it was actually quite good. um how did I become a good cook? Joe Rayo can't cook, I'll tell you right now. Renata will tell you that the man can't boil water. Am I right, Joe?
No comment.
I always liked cooking. I mean, I always enjoyed it. since I was a kid. I watched my mother cook all the time. My grandmother cook. Um, I've always said that God gave Italians the ability to perform the loaves and fishes miracle. I swear this is true, Joe. I'd go to my grandmother's house as a kid, and you'd open her cabinets, and she'd have nothing in there, absolutely nothing. And you think for a moment there that you're going to starve to death, and then before you know it, there's like a spread for 20 people, all right at the came out of nowhere. You'd open her fridge, you'd have nothing in there. Somehow, miraculously, there was enough food for 20 people, and there was leftovers. I don't know how. I don't know how, but it's again, it's that loaves and fishes miracle, and it's in the Bible. So God gave it to Italians, and we can pull it off. So anyway, yeah, I just always enjoy doing it, and I live by myself, and I have my friends with their when I have them over, I throw smart dinner parties, and I try different things, and I'm a good meat and potatoes type of cook.
I
Okay.
like I like your nickname, according to Rich Rothmansky, Chef Boyar.
Yes. Oh, no, no, no. By the way, you never see any. There's nothing like that in my house. My sauce is from scratch. When I make occasionally I'll make my Sunday sauce, and it's from scratch. There's no jarred anything in there. So just want to make that clear. Okay. So anyway, um, I think that's pretty much it. I don't have much else going on. My basic aim was to do this show because I'm exhausted, and then I was going straight to bed. And I think that's my goal tonight. In fact, JJ's totally wiped out, absolutely totally wiped out. He's laying down on the foot of the bed as it is.
Well, my dog last night, because it's just the two of us, so he got at one end of the bed, rolled himself into a little ball, and pretty much laid there for the entire time that uh, you know over the course of the night. Usually he kind of fiddles around. Sometimes he'll start scratching or whatever. But last night he was dead to the world.
Yeah, and that's where I will be shortly. So, all right, folks, thanks for being here tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Hope your weekend was good, and we'll see you tomorrow. And maybe Scott Briller will be back and give us and we can start up Briller Jeopardy again. So we'll see everybody tomorrow night.
Good night, folks.